Bridging behaviorism and ACT means bringing the best of both worlds together, solid science and psychological flexibility. In this episode, we explore how acceptance and commitment therapy and traditional behavior analysis can join forces to honor values, support flexibility, and create meaningful change. Hi, I'm Shira.
And I'm Shayna. We're behavior analysts who create weekly content about how to teach children with autism so that they make real progress. And we create shareable resources to make your job just a little easier. Today's topic is all about bridging behaviorism and ACT. And if you want more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on new video releases.
So we talk a lot about compassion and ABA and what does that really mean and how do you quantify that? And part of compassion is being able to, empathize with feelings. And, if you think about if you're going through something challenging, when you talk to your friends or you talk to your spouse, when something is, really not going well, you don't want them to give you like a solution. You don't want them to fix your behavior or problem solve. You want someone to just say like, yeah, that sounds really terrible. Be able to really sit with you in those feelings because you can't always brush the feelings aside. Sometimes the only solution is being with the feeling and having somebody who can help you be with that feeling. And that, traditionally in behaviorism, we've done a lot of problem solving and we're really good at problem solving. And I think bridging the how well we can problem solve with also an ability to empathize and be compassionate is what ACT brings to the table.
So, our title of the podcast is Bridging Behaviorism and ACT. And it's a little bit misleading because really behaviorism or ACT is behaviorism. So, behaviorism is the big picture, right? ABA. And then within that field or within behaviorism is ACT. So, let's start thinking about it like that. So, it's not like we're trying to combine two worlds, it's about talking about how ACT is behaviorism.
And when we think about ACT and we think about thoughts and feelings in behavioral terms, we're able to move beyond like compliance-based strategies. We're able to move beyond things that create like external or short-term change and really able to create lasting long-term change. ACT relies on principles of relational frame theory, which is how so many of us learn. Like we learn through contingencies that are not directly experienced. We derive relations all the time and we make assumptions and we draw conclusions that may or may not have happened. And so I think if we can acknowledge those things that are ways we all learn, we can make real behavior change with something like ACT.
So let's look at shared foundations and how ACT is like behavioralism. So here's what many people don't realize about ACT is that it did actually grow out of behaviorism and relational frame theory, like Shira just mentioned. Both approaches really do speak the same language per se about that functional contextualism. They both care about what works in context. They both value observable, measurable outcomes, and they also make space for private events like thoughts and feelings. Imagine, Shira, thoughts and feelings in behavioral analysis. This is kind of, different for me.
Well, what it really does is it creates what they call psychological flexibility, which takes like thoughts and feelings, that mindfulness, and combines it with values directed action, which is what we love, right? We love action because we can measure that and we can observe that. For some really good resources in, tying together ACT with behavior analysis, there are a bunch of really good articles. One is by Tarbox et al. Called Acceptance and Commitment Training Within the Scope of Practice of Applied Behavior Analysis. Another one is by Dixon et al. That is called Is Acceptance and Commitment Training a Method That Applied Behavior Analysts Can and Should Use? So I think you should definitely go check those out. It really gives a great description about how ACT really fits into behavior analysis and how it grew out of this science of relational frame theory and functional contextualism, which is really fascinating.
We'll link uh we'll link those articles in our show notes as well. So now let's think about practical integration of how we can bring ACT into everyday ABA work. Before I do that, let's back up for a second and like just think about a scenario. So, you're working with a child and, the child's getting really frustrated because the work is really hard and maybe they make an error. And how often does this happen in ABA, right? There's a lot of kids we work with who can't tolerate errors and they get frustrated and they rip up their paper because they're so frustrated. And, we've been trying to teach them not to rip up their paper. We're trying to teach them how to tolerate errors and we're trying to teach them how to say, it's okay and move on. But they're just not there because they're super upset. So, one day, what if the ABA therapist switches it up and actually says, wow, like I can tell you're really mad, and that's okay. Imagine, like, whoa, the kid goes, what? You get it too? Huh? Yeah, totally. You're so mad. I mean, not a reason to rip up your paper, and let's talk about that next. But the first part of it is really just, being able to empathize with your learner and label those emotions. And like Shira said at the very beginning, it's almost like you're just sitting with those emotions. It's not for 30 minutes or anything like that. It's for a couple seconds, but just that the aha moment is there like, yeah, you feel mad. Yeah, it happens to the best of us for sure. And that's really the start of that practical integration.
And that's really what ACT is. And it's for our learners, our clients, ourselves, our staff. It is the ability to tolerate discomfort in the pursuit of your values. We can all do hard things if we really want what's on the other side of that. And so the first step is figuring out, what do you value? What do our clients value? What do our staff value? What do our parents value? What do you value? And then you can start to take steps or be aware of the things that are getting in the way of you accomplishing your values or taking action towards your values. So if, for example, you really value client progress, but you tend to get discouraged when, things are hard or you're tired or, you had a difficult confrontation with a family. And so you start to not be on top of your work and you feel worthless or you don't feel like why should I bother? And all of these things are going to bring you further from your value. And part of what ACT can do is, okay, how can you tolerate difficult conversations and difficult feelings and still say, but it's so important to me that my clients make progress that I'm going to, take a couple minutes to myself, regroup, and then get back to the things that matter and take action towards getting closer to those values.
Yeah, we're going to be doing a CEU coming up. It's on December 11th from 12 p.m. until 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Join us live. We also will record it, so you can also join asynchronously. But it's all about ACT, and it's just flexible applications of ACT. So we're diving deeper into what we're talking about now, but saying, we can use this with parents, we can use this with clients, we can use this as a business and an organization to say, hey, as a whole, what are organizations' values and how do we move forward with that? Supervisees and supervisors. So Shira and I will be going through a whole bunch of practical experiences and with the ACT Values Matrix in that CEU.
We did a whole episode on applying this kind of ACT and values to social skills. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in our CEU as well. But for a little taste of it, go check out episode 123, which is about teaching social skills using ACT. So if you are a BCBA and you're listening to this and you're wondering like, okay, but like, is this really behavior analysis? Is it scientific? Um, it is. And I think the way that you can do that is, again, focusing on the action, focusing on the parts that are observable and measurable, and figuring out a way that you can move. You'll know if people are moving towards their values because you're going to be observing their action. And go read those articles because they give some really good insight and tips into, merging the science with the thoughts of like, well, see, you're having thoughts about thoughts. With like, this feels a little bit, too touchy-feely.
I think the biggest thing is figuring out what you want to change using the ACT Values Matrix. What difference are you trying to make? Is it your attitude towards things or is it an actual behavior? So by doing the ACT Values Matrix, by engaging in some of these things and by changing your thinking, you're obviously changing behavior. So what is that behavior? So take some data on the actual behavior and then you'll be able to see whether or not it's evidence-based practice or not.
Yeah, as an example, we have a student who wants to be in school, but he gets very, very anxious about things that happen in the classroom. He doesn't know how to deal with it. And he can express to us that it is a value for him to be in school and it's a value for him to make friends and to be included in certain games and activities. And then we can work with him through the idea like, okay, but if you're spending all your day in the library because you're avoiding the classroom, you're not going to be able to make friends and you're not going to get closer to your values. And so we talk a little bit about that and some strategies that he can use to then tolerate. We're not taking away the anxiety. We're not taking away the feelings of anxiousness and nervousness and discomfort that he has when thinking about being in the classroom, but we're going to acknowledge it, be present with it, and give him some strategies to deal with that discomfort as opposed to trying to take that away from him. Join us for our CEU because we're going to be giving a lot more examples like that, where it's not just about, thinking about compassionate ABA is not just about the target behavior that we're looking at or that pretty graph or the data collection, but it's about thinking about the big picture. Like, are we improving the lives of the individuals that we work with? How are you and your quality of life? It can be applied to yourself as well. And blending the two, behavior analysis and ACT, really is going to bring compassion into the things that we want to accomplish. Click the link on or around this video to join our next live CEU event, flexible application of ACT in parent training, staff supervision, and client support on Thursday, December 11th from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
We also encourage you to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any future events and videos, and leave a like and comment below if you have further questions.